I've set the fume cupboard up for our permanent mounting stage of the thin section process. I think I'm going to have to do a little walkthrough because I did attempt to turn the fume cupboard on and demonstrate how to clean your samples and your glass, but the noise of the fume cupboard is going to drown me out. So what I'll do is I'll walk us through how to start this process, and then I think I'll also do a next video to demonstrate the mix of resin for permanent mounting and how to load the press. And then our third video will actually be me turning on the camera and you watching just a little bit of me loading the press and pouring resin on the samples, spreading it and getting it ready to put on the press. So we're going to have to break it down in a story of 3 parts really, but ever so quickly, remember the rule of flooding your samples with acetone. These I released off the glass with my wonderful little Stanley knife blade, and I have to say they were a bit difficult, and you have difficulty when the super glue saturates into either a poorly cured sample slice or saturates into the fabric of a rock, a porous rock. And of course, these are filled with rocks. So the super glue did do a little bit of saturating, but I did manage to get them off with no breaking of corners. So my only advice here is absolutely run your sets, leave them overnight in order for the super glue to ease the bond, and then come back after 24 hours and try to use your blade, wedging it under the glass to see if you can get some movement. If you can't, you can try to flood the sample with a little bit of acetone to ease up that glue, soften it up. But the best is that it lets go itself. I will show you this process on the last 2 sample slices, which I ran this morning, and we'll get that in there in these videos somewhere. Right, so our rule is I'll do it on a couple samples where you can see it in camera. Flood the sample with acetone and don't rub furiously. Pull from the top to the bottom, top to the bottom, and you can see I always pull from the top to the bottom and then blow across the surface to dry out the acetone, and it did pull a great deal of oil off, which makes me believe these samples are impregnated pretty good. They're not acting like a sponge for the oil. So we flood all our samples, we pull the acetone off, then we turn them over, and you do the same on the fronts, which really are the faces we're going to bond to the glass. So let's have a look at one. And that is beautiful. Look at that surface. So the oil has almost completely been removed. So that gives me a lot of confidence now that we can, after 24 hours pretty much, clean our sample slices, clean our glass by the same method of flooding, and then we're going to get ready to mix our resin and to put our sample slices on the press. So I'm going to turn the camera off. This is the end of part 1. because I need to turn the fume cupboard on before I finish my cleaning. So we'll be back in a minute, and we're going to go through the recipe we mix to mount our sample slices.